Good morning. This is the March 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Utah Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. And as usual, we'll be kicking off the morning with a briefing session by Director Baza and the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. Director Baza, over to you, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Borden, and welcome to you and the members of the board to our March meeting of the board here at the DNR building in Salt Lake City. My name is John Baza. I'm the Director of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. This morning we're going to continue in our series of program updates from the division, and this month we've asked Steve Fluke, the Abandoned Mine Program Manager, to come forward and provide you with a briefing on AMR activities that have occurred during the year. So come forward, Steve, and probably want to say your name again.
Yep, thank you, John. Yep, my name is Steve Fluke, and I've been the manager of the Abandoned Mine Program for over 9 years now, and appreciate the time this morning. So good morning, board. I'd like to start a little bit, well, I'm going to give a review of 2021 and 2022 activities within our program and some updates on our funding and our grant sources. I wasn't here last year, so I thought I'd just go ahead and do 2 years at once and give you a little summary of a breakdown of some of the projects that we worked on and a couple of important ones that we've been doing lately. But as a refresher on our program, for those that aren't too familiar with us, we are a Title IV program of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. So that's the reason our program exists, is through SMCRA. We got primacy in 1983 from the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement. We're funded primarily by the SMCRA AML fund. We have been historically. These days we have other grant sources as well. But our other sources include an AML cooperative agreement with the Bureau of Land Management, and we also have a cooperative agreement with the Department of Energy for safeguarding, inventorying and safeguarding defense-related uranium mines. They're called drums in their program. And we have a new funding source through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so that's been a pretty big deal, big game changer in the AML world throughout the country. The bipartisan infrastructure law is also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It was signed in November of 2021, and the bill reauthorized our AML fee collection, which is something we've been working on for years. So in 2021, the fee collection ended for AML and for the SMCRA AML fund. So that is going to continue on through 2034 now. I think it's the fourth time maybe that it's been reauthorized. The bill also authorized $11.3 billion for states and tribes with existing Title IV programs. So this money is to be distributed to states and tribes that have these programs like ours for a period of 15 years every year annually, given grants that are in the form of 5-year grants. And Utah is eligible for $5.75 million each year, as long as we can demonstrate that we have work or needs for it in our inventory. The money can only be used for coal reclamation, but it has opened the doors for other types of work that we weren't previously able to do. It can be used for standalone priority 3 coal reclamation. So priority 1 and 2 are hazardous, physical safety hazards, environmental hazards. They're immediate hazards to the public and the environment. Priority 3 are problems, environmental problems, but they're not necessarily related to directly related to a mine. And I can show you some examples, but they might be a coal pile that's just out in the middle of nowhere without a hazard around it. So they weren't eligible for work previously, but now we can do priority 3 projects. We can also do set aside for coal fires and acid mine drainage, and the money can be used for water supply projects that are affected by historic coal mining. It also established an abandoned hard rock reclamation program, but it didn't obligate any funding for it or allocate any funding. That was supposed to happen through the the Build Back Better bill, which didn't get passed. And since then, there has been a little bit of seed money to get the program going. The Department of Interior Office of Environmental Policy and Compliance is overseeing this hard rock reclamation program. So this is the first time there's been federal AML funding for hard rock specifically. But it is still waiting to be funded. We may see a few grant distributions, maybe money to get some states that don't have existing programs up and running. Because we're a SMACRA Title IV program, our primary focus is coal reclamation. And in Utah, we're mostly completed with our coal reclamation, but we will be updating our inventory due to the bill funding. We have a large water line project in Grassy Trail Creek outside of East Carbon City, and that will obligate our first bill funding when we get that, and probably a good chunk of the second. We have been doing and will be doing a lot more maintenance, and abandoned coal mine fires have been a real issue, and these both are mostly due to the ongoing drought that has created more fires, that has caused erosion to some of our past reclamation projects, and also, as you'll see, has created a lot of ongoing abandoned mine-related coal fires. Our non-coal reclamation through SMACRA, which we have been doing since the late 80s, I guess, we're only able to address the physical safety hazards of abandoned mines, and we have estimated that there are about 17,000 mine openings in Utah. There's not a comprehensive inventory, so we inventory as we go along. And we have mitigated over 7,000 or closed about 7,000 hazardous mine openings. We prioritize projects based on proximity to populations and recreational use. Through our other funding and our other hard rock, non-coal kind of abandoned mine reclamation, we can address physical safety and environmental hazards through our BLM funding. And we also, we prioritize these projects using BLM field offices. So they tell us where people are recreating, because there's a lot of transient recreation or just areas where nobody was in the past. And suddenly it becomes a big issue because, you know, it's a new climbing area, a new mountain biking trail, or something similar to that RV trail, and there's a lot of mines in the area. So the BLM can keep tabs on that. It's difficult for us to really track those sort of things. We also have been doing a lot of uranium mine closures the past 10 years. Our funding overlaps for eligibility between our different funding sources, so we can use O.S.M, BLM, and DOE drum funds for these uranium mines, so we usually use a combination of those. And we've been trying to do a systematic maintenance program where we will go back to some of our project areas and have somebody dedicated to doing our maintenance work. Because we do have a lot of maintenance needs after 40 years almost of abandoned mine closures. We've been trying to do 2 maintenance construction projects a year. And we succeeded on that for a couple of years, but the past 2 years we have only managed to do 1 each year because we've had a lot of other needs. A lot of it has to do, I think, with the coal fires that we've had that have distracted us from some of our other work. So in 2021, we completed 8 reclamation projects. So 1 coal project was the Peerless Emergency Fire Abatement. We did 7 non-coal projects, So these are the Browns Park project, Mineral Canyon, the Overland project, which is the final project for the Gold King, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the mining district, but, and we did maintenance at the Scranton mine, which is in the North Tintic area. We did uranium miner closure, there's phase 2 of the Buckmaster project, which outside of the San Rafael Swell, and the Dividend phase 1, which is in the Eureka area. And finally, the Topachi Peak phase 1 in Beaver County. So in 2021, we extinguished 2 coal fires and we closed 310 hazardous mine openings. In 2022, we completed 7 reclamation projects. We had 2 coal projects, the Hardscrabble Coal Refuse Fire and the Rains Canyon Subsidence Project, both in Carbon County. And we had 5 non-coal projects. They include the Topachi Peak Phase 2, Phase 1 of the Wasatch Front Project, Phase 3 of the Apache Peak, so we finished that project with Phase 3. We did maintenance in the Yellow Cat Mining District, and we started Phase 1 of the Cane Creek Project. So through that work, we extinguished 2 coal fires and we closed 276 hazardous mine openings. So I'd like to talk about some of the fire work that we've done the past year and a half or 2 years almost. It started with the 2021 Bear wildfire. That began with a lightning strike on June 8th, 2021, and it was mostly contained by the end of the month, but it had burned 13,000 acres in the Wasatch Plateau. You can see on the map there the helpers down at the bottom, and Highway 6 is pointed out. So the fire did not jump over Highway 6, but it burned 13,000 acres to the south and west of it. And this fire ignited 2 coal seams, we found out later, and 7 coal refuse fires. The first fire that we were made aware of was the Peerless Coal Mine fire. We were contacted by Forestry Fires and State Lands. They said that somebody had found this, located this fire in a coal seam. We went and looked at it, determined that it was near some abandoned mine adits. We were concerned that it might burn into the underground mine workings. And once it did that, or it does that, then it could really spread quickly and be difficult to address. Then we found out up the canyon there was a refuse fire as well. So we obtained emergency authorization from O.S.M. So it's the first time our program in 40 years has done an emergency project. And we also went through emergency procurement signed off by Director Steed. So that allowed us to just pick a contractor that we knew could do the work and have them go out and just get on the ground without having to go through the bid process. This is the photos of the coal seam fire. The one on the left is just a close-up of the fire. We call it the pizza oven fire also. And there's just, for perspective, step back, and you can see where it's located there. But there are several adits, old adits around that area that we closed many years ago. The refuse fire further up canyon is shown here. It just expresses itself on the surface with these fractures. But under the fractures is burning coal, and the threat is that if you could bust through the crust into burning coal. So they can be quite hazardous and not very obvious. Our method of abatement was to excavate the burning coal, and then we quenched it using a foaming agent with water, and we mixed it with fill material on site, cooled to 125 degrees. Above 125 degrees, it's thought that coal could spontaneously combust, so that's why that was our target temperature. In the end, we used, between the 2 fires, we used 3,345 gallons of water and 15 gallons of a foaming concentrate, a firefighting foam, and we excavated and quenched about 2,000 cubic yards of material. So all that material had to be brought up with the track hoe and on ATVs. There wasn't a road that a truck could drive up to the site. We've spent, it cost $73,457 for the work that we did there. And there's some photos of the final reclamation after it was regraded and seeded of the two sites. The second fire was the Hardscrabble coal refuse fire. So while we were working on Peerless, we were notified that there was another fire in Hardscrabble Canyon just over the ridge from where Peerless fire is. On the map, you can see Helper and Hardscrabble Canyon where the two fires are. We just knew about the one at first, and it wasn't very obvious, and it was kind of difficult to find. It was just a few fractures. You could smell the coal burning. But there wasn't a lot of signs of it, which changed within a month or two. The refuse was a coal pile that was along the road that we weren't aware of in the past, and it was what would be considered a priority 3 coal pile, because it wasn't associated immediately with any hazardous mine openings or any priority 1 or 2 sites. So we discovered that there was a second fire up the road, and we obtained emergency authorization from O.S.M again, and we went through the emergency procurement process. This image, aerial image, shows the canyon, and you can see along the road, just to the south side of the road, there is that's all that flat area is all coal refuse. So, and also this area was used quite a bit by local people. There were always people up the canyon walking dogs and having picnics or whatever. So it was since it was about the only flat area in that drainage, a pretty steep canyon, that there was always a lot of activity there. And so it was a particular threat, I think, because it wasn't obvious that there was coal burning. This is about a month after, and we thought that the coal pile, it looks like in this image, is about 4 feet tall on top of native soil with the stream channel there. But after we started digging, and then after this, about the second day, this happened. So we had, it was a lot bigger than we thought. And we were dug down to about 30 feet of coal instead of 4 feet. So there was quite a bit more coal there than we had realized. So once the coal gets exposed like that and the volatiles leach out or gas out, then it can really flame up like that. We didn't see a lot of this after this day. We did see some burning fire. But that's where we retreated and decided that we needed a bigger boat. We needed to come up with another plan. We had spent on that phase $43,000, but we wrote up some new specs for the scale of the project that we now knew it was. And we put that project out to competitive bid. The image there shows how we left it after that first phase. And so then we had a contractor out there, the 517 company, and we addressed both the sites just by spreading the coal out, excavating and spreading it out, mixing it with fill material at a 10-to-1 ratio. We used the foaming agent and water, and we were able to get water trucks up to the site and use quite a bit more water than the other project, the Peerless project. And we spread the hot coal and to make sure that it was down to 125 degrees, and then stockpiled it. In the end, we handled over 100,000 cubic yards of material. About 40,000 of that is burning coal refuse. We used 154,000 gallons of water and 650 gallons of foaming concentrate. and the final construction cost was $459,000 or $459,000. Through our work with these fires, we were joint recipients of the Pulaski Award, which is given by the BLM's National Interagency Fire Center Governing Board. The Green River District of the BLM applied for the award, and they received it for the Bear and Binion fire work. So we were a partnering agency for the work that was done, and we shared the award with the BLM Green River District, the Manti La Salle Forest Service, the Division of Forestry Fires and State Lands, the Moab Interagency Fire Center, and Price City, Helper City, and Carbon City, and then the division. It was a heavy award. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about our community outreach work, because that's really important. We try to get the word out about the hazards of abandoned mines. We have our workbook that we distribute each year that could be used in the fourth grade curriculum. We distributed in 2021 13,202 workbooks. In 2022, 12,898 workbooks were distributed. We also set up booths at the Tintic Silver Jubilee in Eureka and the Park City Miners Day. And we have our yearly calendar distribution. We didn't have a 2022 calendar, but we had our 2021 calendar that I think we printed about 1,700 of those. So that's all I had. Welcome any questions.
Board, any questions? Mr. Church.
On the mines that you have reclaimed and you do maintenance work on them, do you have a periodic inspection, or how do you determine which mines need maintenance?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't. In the past, we did not do that. We kind of did it, I guess, as if we found out if we were in the area, it was easier for us to be able to just add on a maintenance project onto an existing project, but we can't do that any longer through procurement rules, and also through I think the requirements for cultural work before we do any maintenance are the standards are a little higher than they used to be. So we need to actually have a small project each time we do maintenance. So we've been going back systematically for the past 4 or 5 years to look at and inventory mining districts that we know that there's a particular number of problems. We have a lot of vandalism, but there's also just sometimes you get subsidence or other issues that happen naturally to some of the work that we've done. So we've been trying to be systematic about it and go back to some of the areas each year.
Any other questions? Ms. Garrison?
Do you feel you have a pretty complete inventory of abandoned mines? Are there a lot of mines out there that are not on any record that you come across?
We do not have a complete inventory, and I think no state does. We could spend all of our time inventorying, and I think everybody chooses to inventory as they go along. We have, so the 17,000, and those are hazardous mine openings. So one mine could have numerous openings, or a mine could just be one opening. So it's everybody counts a little different, and we all are in different stages, and some programs have been around a long time, some of the western states, and we have pretty solid understanding of what is out there, but nobody has a comprehensive inventory. But this new hard rock program that's being established by the OEPC, they are developing a database that I think we're going to finally have a national database that everybody can put their mine, what they know about their inventory, and it will be a consistent account, whereas everybody's counting different things, whether it's a mine or an opening or structure or feature or something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Along those lines, would you have some kind of a partnership with the public? Because there's a lot of people out there, recreating and things of that nature that could help identify any of those that may not be on the database, or you could add to the database?
We do have an app that we've distributed in the department, at least, Department of Natural Resources, to other agencies that they can, it's a Survey 123 app that they can send in information to us on an abandoned mine. And we do, we do receive notices from the public, but it is difficult to just get random information. We don't have context for it. It might be something that we already knew about, but we always welcome people to give us information that they might have.
Any other questions? I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. Congratulations on the Pulaski Award. You can work out with that.
Yeah.
I'm really interested when you go and put out one of these fires, you obviously want to make sure it doesn't catch fire again 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So you're doing a final mitigation strategy, I assume, to either keep the oxygen out or so disperse the fuel that it won't catch.
Yes.
Is that 10-to-1 ratio of inert fill to coal sort of a good rule of thumb for how much?
In that case, it's pretty minimal, but we had to import it all. So, and it was such a huge quantity that that was about as much as we figured we could handle. Because for one thing, we would, if we doubled that pile there with more fill material, then we'd have a mountain. But we are doing reclamation at that hardscrabble site. We have engineering ongoing. We're waiting for the snow to melt. We didn't get on the ground before the snow flew this fall, but we'll be doing some characterization, and we have an engineering company on contract to do the work for us.
And how many meters does the cover need to be to cut the oxygen enough that you wouldn't have an issue? Or how do you design that cover to prevent combustion in the future?
Well, we often with abandoned mine work, there isn't a source nearby, and you have to get by with what you have. Mm-hmm. I think the Title V rule is to have 4 feet of cover on top of coal piles like that. So that would be ideal, I think. But we rarely can do that. And there aren't standards for abandoned mine work because there wasn't fill material set aside for the work ahead of time. With the additional bill funding, we'll probably have the ability to spend more money and bring in fill material that we might not have been able to afford in the past.
And one last question. Do you have an inventory of how many abandoned, mostly hard rock sites, but perhaps coal sites as well, might be releasing acid rock drainage or saline drainage, or waters that are loading into waters of Utah that need remediation?
We don't see a lot of water quality problems in Utah, probably partially because we don't have a lot of water.
Yes.
So that has a lot to do with it. And but just because the geology here also, I think the waters get more buffered, and so that we don't have a lot of acid mine drainage. But we have been working with the Division of Environmental Quality, the Department of Environmental Quality, and their water quality group. They've been going around trying to find impaired waters that are due to mining, and they're not seeing a lot, but there's a little bit out there, and we will be maybe working and partnering to address some of those.
Thanks. That's good news, and thanks for a very interesting presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Steve. It was very interesting, and I think it helps the board as we go through these program updates to see things about the division that maybe you didn't know were happening. So thank you very much. The next thing we have to talk to you about is since the legislative session ended back on March 4th, the division is able to give you a kind of a concluding update for things that occurred during the legislative session. And to do that is Natasha Baliff, our legislative liaison and policy coordinator.
Hi, good morning. I'm Natasha Baloff. I'm the Legislative and Policy Coordinator for the division. So to give the legislative wrap-up, I know you guys get my weekly emails, so I don't want to be too repetitious. So I've kind of structured it as bills that passed, bills that we were watching that could have affected us and then changed, and then bills that didn't pass. So to start off, SB 31 gave us a new state flag, and I actually just heard that the governor signed it yesterday and did an executive order on top of it saying that the original Utah state flag has to be flown up at the Capitol along with the new state flag. That's a picture of it off to the side, and there's a very detailed summary of all of the meaning behind it. So if you're curious about that, you can look up Senate Bill 31. Senate Bill 256 clarified the severance tax deposit timing. This was something that, at least from the division standpoint, we already knew the timing, but it's nice having that in statute so that we can refer back to that. House Bill 54 reduces the state income tax from 4.85% down to 4.65%. We got the porcini is the state mushroom, the brine shrimp is the state crustacean. House Bill 8 passed 5% cost of living adjustment for all state employees, and then there will be a 3.75% targeted funding increase. We don't know the exact positions yet. The governor has suggested, he's made his suggestions, and then we're just waiting for the legislature to come up with their listing of positions. Senate Bill 2 gave us all of our building blocks. We had 4 of them. We had 3 oil and gas vehicles. We had funding for the carbon sequestration program staff. So that included an environmental manager, a petroleum engineer, and an administrative assistant. And then we had 2 database enhancements, one for the oil and gas program and one for the minerals program. We also received a surprise RFA for our oil and gas group. This was specifically to address a backlog of permits. The original intention was that the legislature would appropriate $500,000 for it, and then industry would add an additional $500,000. We could only use the matching funds. But in Senate Bill 2, it has a $500,000 appropriation, and then there's also $500,000 of federal funds. So there's still a lot of unknowns on our end. We're still trying to figure it out. But the division's intention is to work with division staff and try to figure out the best way to use that money and to just get through the backlog of applications. And then bills that were changed that we were watching, House Bill 21, Open and Public Meetings Act. This originally specified that there needed to be a reasonable amount of time for public comment in a public meeting. I mean, this is something that the board already does. I wasn't too concerned about it. We would have had to do rulemaking for it, but after 5 substitutions, it changed to only apply to local school boards. Senate Bill 107, oil and gas severance tax. The intention was to rebuild roads, and Senator Winterton wanted an above-trend severance tax, so anything that would spill back into the general fund to go into an account that was controlled by the Community Impact Board. And I think this one had 3 or 4 different substitutions, and it kind of got cleaned up a bit. It still has the above-trend revenue going into a fund, but it will go into the Transportation Investment Fund. And then failed bills. Top one is House Bill 412. This is state employment revisions. It created a Schedule AY position, so it would have been at will. This would have eventually applied to all state employees if you were. So for me, I'm a Schedule B employee. I could willingly move over to at will and get a 5% increase, or I could stay in Schedule B, and then if I ever moved positions, it would be an AY position. There was a lot of a lot of outrage surrounding it. No one's excited about it. This was mirroring a bill last year for Schedule AX that just applied to supervisors. Really, no one has been happy about it. So we're all excited to see it fail, but it will most likely come back up next year. And I think that it will be an interim study item. And then House Bill 527, this was one that we were involved with, mining operation amendments. We had suggested some Title 40 procedural changes for our minerals program. It also included Title 17 changes addressing vested mining use. We had met with the bill sponsor. We thought that we got it all figured out, and then it never left the first committee, the Rules Committee. So hopefully this ends up being a potential interim study item. This is something that we've submitted as a study item. We did say that we would love to have those procedural changes still in there, and if they would like to explore more, we would love to have more clarity between our large and small mine application process. We did also request that if Title 40 and Title 17 are paired back up again, that one of the study items specifically looks to see if the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining is the most appropriate quorum to hear those vested mining use determinations. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll keep you updated as to if it becomes an item. Yes.
One question on that. Have we expressed our preference that they don't get linked up again?
We didn't explicitly say that, but we did say we would love to have all of the Title 40 stuff, and then if these do end up being paired together, so
Okay.
we'll kind of see, because I know that there's other stakeholders who are pushing to have Title 17 with those changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, my voice is going out. The final failed bill that was really concerning to us is House Bill 173, government attorney fee amendments. This would allow attorney fees to be paid, attorney fees of a private party to be paid by a governmental entity if they won in a civil action. This was really concerning for at least every single division in DNR. I know that it was really concerning statewide, that it could turn into just frivolous lawsuits, ways for private parties to get more money. I think this one also had 4 substitutions, and in the end, they changed it to the Citizens Empowerment Task Force to study ways to remove barriers for citizens to exercise their rights with court actions. But it ultimately didn't pass, and I know that this will also be a study item during the interim session. But that is my presentation as far as a legislative wrap-up. If there's any questions that you have, I'm more than happy to address them.
Board, any questions? Seeing none, on to
Perfect.
the next topic. Thank you.
All right, do you want to address the next? Okay.
So the next item on the briefing agenda is division rulemaking priorities. Chairman Borden and I had a great discussion in the last few weeks about a presentation that Natasha gave back in September of last year, where we said, here's kind of the universe of rulemaking that the division is faced with, which ones take precedence and which ones should be working on first. So having that discussion with Chairman Borden, I've passed the information on to Natasha, and she's going to give you some information on what the division is looking at in terms of rulemaking at this point.
Thank you. I don't know if I need to mention it again, but I will for the record. Natasha Balliff, Legislative and Policy Coordinator for the division. So again, this is, wow, my mind just went blank, and I even have words in front of me. Rulemaking feedback. Moving on. So these are our current and upcoming rulemakings. We're currently working on the oil and gas bonding rule. This was initiated by the Oil and Gas Program audit. We're currently in the informal phase. We actually just made a change to this yesterday, so instead of sending out a third draft with all of our edits and having it red line crossed out, we really got stuck on blanket bonds and the amounts and how operators would qualify for a blanket bond. So I actually just sent out an email yesterday. We do have a meeting scheduled for, I believe it's April 18th. Yeah, April 18th, 2 to 4 p.m. And we just asked stakeholders to address bonding amounts and how operators can qualify for blanket bonds. So we're hoping that that gives us more ideas. we keep going back and forth on different things, and we would just really like to hear from stakeholders what their opinion is, or what their suggestions are. Additionally, it's been requested that mineral suspension rule comes up next, and then oil and gas flaring and venting, horizontal drilling, and then E&P waste disposal sites. The E&P waste disposal might actually need to come before. I know that Bart Kettle, who's the deputy director for the oil and gas program, I believe it's tomorrow, he has a meeting with waste management and radiation control, and so hopefully that gives us a slightly better timeline, but we will need to address that. Another thing that will be upcoming is the mineral rule. We have the 5-year renewal, so hopefully I will bring that to you next month, and that's something that you'll just need to give an approval on. Other rulemakings, and this is in no specific order. We have some long-term bonding that we would like to address, seismic exploration, board rules for electronic meetings, carbon sequestration, board and hearing procedures. We would like to make a small change where we add city, or the OGM has to contact counties and cities. And then we'd also like to update mailing requirements and have it all be electronic mailings. And then just to have it on your mind, I guess. Not that you really need to keep it there, but 5-year renewals. Next year we have coal rules, and then in 2025 we do have the oil and gas rules that we'll need to renew. And that is it. So if you have any questions or...
Could you go back to the slide on the current rulemakings? So I think the thing that Chairman Morton and I talked about is these are things that the board also wants to see. And because we want to do the things that the board is asking us to do, we certainly want to engage you as board members as we go through these upcoming rulemakings. As we've done in the past, we've done stakeholder meetings, we've invited board members to attend those, and it helps if, one or two of you on each rule are informed as to how we got to where we got to by the time the division brings it to you for a formal rulemaking action. So we'll continue in that vein, but you may want to look at this list and say, well, do I have a particular passion for one of these rulemakings that I would like to volunteer to serve on a stakeholders committee on? So keep that in mind, and we'll be reaching out to you as we commence these rulemakings through the informal process to see if you'd like to participate. Do you have any questions for either me or Natasha?
Before questions, I'd love to set a little context as well. I found the discussions with John really helpful, and I feel like we did reach an agreement on some of these priorities, but I also want to stress to the board, I was planning to talk to you about this at lunch today, so this is not written in stone until I have full board buy-in. So it's a very timely topic. I was planning to do it before I even realized this was coming up. We didn't have time last month to do it. So I know some of you are wondering what the mineral suspension rule is, for instance, and we can talk about that at lunch if you'd like. We can talk about all of these, and I want your feedback. Yes.
A couple years ago, we did a lot of work on the horizontal drilling rule. Did we finalize a portion of that, or I don't even remember where we ended up?
We kind of reached a stagnation point with that because as we talked to the practitioners and division staff, the matters that were coming before the board seemed to solve many of the problems that we were trying to address initially. But as Chairman Borden and I have talked, there may be some value in bringing it back up to say, is there a way to maybe minimize the number of items coming in front of the board? If we do a kind of an overall generalized state siting rule for horizontal wells, for example, we could specify things like setback requirements and stuff like that that may help to decrease the number of items that the board has to see ultimately.
Yeah, because at the time that was my feeling. We were trying to pigeonhole everything into certain rules where we were just learning and figuring things out. And so maybe we are in a better place now where we can generalize, have a general rule. So, okay.
And hopefully with the experience gained over the last years, it could be a simpler and less lengthy rule than what would have been envisioned 5 years ago or whatever. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Ms. Sierra.
Given the new funding for the carbon sequestration program staff, do we need to move the carbon sequestration rulemaking to a higher position, or is there any correlation? I see Dana says no.
That's a bit of a tough one. We know from talking with the EPA and even the grant process we're going through, this is going to be a long-haul process to stand up rules for carbon sequestration. We recently hired a manager to navigate us through that process of rulemaking, and very frankly, what we have to do is stand up a set of rules that passes EPA scrutiny. And that's going to be difficult. I think I mentioned to you before that we received a crosswalk from the EPA on what they expected the rules to look like, and it was 218 pages long, and numerous nuances that we didn't even think of before. So it's going to take us a while to get through that, but we do realize that that's something we need to be working on, but I hope you'll be patient with us because we will have to take some time to work on that one.
Mr. Church.
Mr. Baza, follow up on that. So do these rules have to be in place before the state is granted primacy by the EPA?
The rules have to be in place to a large extent, at least close to final draft, before we can get EPA to sign off and say, yeah, we think your program meets our requirements. But that'll be close to the end of the process, which most states we're talking to are saying it's at least a 2-year process.
So there's no urgency, there's no race by the states to be considered ahead of, since 2 already have primacy.
I think the urgency is mainly on the private sector side. And if, for example, Texas or Louisiana are able to stand up a program before Utah does, then that would attract more private sector investment and projects to come in those states.
Okay, thank you.
One follow-up question on that. How much bandwidth would a sequestration rule take to make? It sounds like a fair amount from if you just go by number of pages of text compared to some of these rules that have already been partially developed or that might be simpler to revise.
Well, I can tell you this. Last year at this time, our bandwidth was nil for this program. So I think the fact that we've hired a manager for this and that he's staffing up at this point, and we've got the legislative authority now to fund more positions than we had initially, hopefully that's enough. We may be going back to the legislature in future budget years and say we need more, but at this point it'll be enough to get us rolling.
Thank you. Any last questions? Seeing none, back to you.
Awesome, I'm done.
Okay, I think Natasha's finished, and we'll excuse her. I don't really have any other items to bring up, just a couple of calendaring things. We have our next month's board meeting scheduled for April 26th. That will be before the May 9th and 10th field trip. So at the April board meeting, we'll plan on briefing you on more details on that trip. I know that Dana is working diligently to try to finalize those details, but if you haven't already responded with your indication that you're going to be attending, please do so, and we'll make sure that we include you on the trip list. That's going to be going out to Vernal, we know that for sure, and the Gilsonite mines are a big part of that field trip, but we're trying to firm up some other details at this point. I'll also mention to you that on April 13th is the next Uinta Basin Oil and Gas Collaborative meeting in Duchesne. That's a Thursday, the 13th. I think the agenda just got finalized and distributed yesterday. So if you have interest in that as well, please pay attention to that date and put it on your calendar. And that's really all I had, Chairman Borden, and happy to answer any other questions.
Any last questions from the board on any of these topics we've heard today? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Very interesting briefing today. Last item we normally take care of in this first session is opportunity for public comment. If there is anybody who would like to make a public comment, I'd ask them to step forward, say their name, and sit in front of one of those microphones. Or anyone participating electronically, I guess. Okay, seeing none, I think we will adjourn for a couple of minutes and then restart with the agenda items, starting with the first docket number. We don't have much time, but perhaps let's start at 5 after 10 to give everyone 10 minutes. Do we need to talk about anything beforehand? Yeah, so 5 after 10, we'll restart. Thank you very much.